Slavery began in the Bible. In 1619, the first slaves landed in the New World. The slaves were taken and sent to mindlessly work in the brutal cotton fields, tobacco fields, and sugar plantations. If you were a slave, you were not considered a person. You were more like a filthy object that kept the plantations up. During the Revolutionary War, slaves participated in the fight. Around 200 years later, slaves were a part of the American culture in the Civil War. White and black men fought side by side for a cause they both believed in. Slavery was not about high morale ground. It was about the money.
Booker T. Washington was born in 1856. He lived in the Burroughs farm. He lived with his mother, brother, and sister in the kitchen, which was only a 6-by-12 room. He slept on filthy rags and ate from a trough that pigs ate from.
After being set free, Booker and his family moved to Malden, Virginia, where his stepfather worked. Booker worked in the salt mines with his stepfather and brother. He wished for an education. He begged his mother to get him a book. Eventually, his mother bought him a blue-back speller. Booker taught himself to read with this book. Soon, he started to go to church, and his whole family followed. A man named William Davis moved to the area. One day, it was learned that Davis could read. The parents decided that they wanted Davis to educate their children, so that their children could have what they were denied. Each family would take turns boarding and housing Williams. Booker could not attend school because he had to work to help provide for his family. Teacher Davis started a night school. Booker was overjoyed, but as exhausted as he was, the night school gave him hope. A deal was struck. Booker could work from 4 a.m. to 9 a.m. and go to school during the day. This only lasted so long. Booker had to return to work in the mines. He did not like the mines. There was always the danger of cave-ins at the coal mines. One day, he was offered a job from Mrs. Viola Ruffner, who was the wife of General Lewis Ruffner. Mrs. Ruffner was an exacting and fastidious woman. Rather than face her, Booker would run away dozens of times, but he always returned to her. She allowed him to read her extensive library. Booker soon got news that he had to go back to work in those dreadful mines. One day, while he was working in the mines, he overheard two men talking about a colored school in Virginia called Hampton. Booker wanted an education badly, so he resolved to go to Hampton.
Booker T. Washington's time at Hampton. Booker traveled by railroad, stagecoach, and on foot for 500 miles until he reached Hampton. He slept on streets and outside of a hotel where he was not admitted. He arrived October 5, 1872, dirty, smelly, and footsore. He had to prove himself to the lady secretary, Miss Mary Mackey, another Viola Ruffner with Yankee values. Hampton Institute was started by General Samuel Chapman Armstrong, who was the son of a missionary to the Hawaiians. Chapman's philosophy was to teach Negroes to labor profitably and go out and teach their neighbors. Students learned skills such as homemaking, sewing, carpentry, architecture, along with studies in the Bible. Their busy schedule began at 5 a.m. with classes that went until 4 p.m. The lights were out at 9:30 p.m. His favorite teacher was a woman by the name of Natalie Lord, who gave him his love for scripture. Booker T. Washington graduated from Hampton Institute in 1875 and was recommended by General Armstrong to teach a colored school in Malden.
On February 10, 1881, Governor Cobb signed an act to establish a normal school for colored teachers in Tuskegee. The act granted $2,000 annually for the school. General Armstrong received a letter asking him to send an eligible teacher for this new school in Tuskegee, Alabama. Armstrong knew that the best man for the job would be Booker. Booker agreed to teach there. He looked for Tuskegee on the map, but couldn't find it because it was too small. Booker T. Washington arrived at Tuskegee 1 month early to observe the conditions. He started the school in a dilapidated church. Mrs. Rutherford Hayes, who was the president's wife at the time, sent Olivia Davidson to teach at Tuskegee. Miss Davidson became the lady principal of the school. Booker and Olivia's vision was to work hard and earn the glory from it. But some students would rather learn an academic subject than hands-on labor. In 1882, Booker married Fannie Norton Smith. With her, he had a daughter named Portia Marshall Washington. From 1884 to 1894, the Tuskegee Institute had grown from 169 students to 712, and the teachers 4 to 54. In 1884, Fannie died of internal injuries from a fall. Booker was grieved over the death of his wife. Before Fannie died, she encouraged Booker to marry Olivia Davidson. In 1885, Booker did just that. With Olivia, he had 2 sons, Baker Taliaferro and Ernest Davidson. Sadly, Olivia died in 1889, widowed twice in 5 years. Booker's life was filled with purpose, but also pain. Tuskegee started to get noticed nationally because of its growth. Booker gave a commencement speech at the Fisk University. He talked about the transformation and progress of the Black people. While he was at Fisk, he met Margaret James Murray. She was full-figured, smart, and beautiful. He married her in 1892. The same year, Frederick Douglass came to Tuskegee to give a commencement speech. He supported Booker's philosophy that work is honor and dignity.
Booker T. Washington received the prophet's mantle from Frederick Douglass as the leader of the blacks. Booker was invited to be a speaker at the Cotton States and International Exhibition. He spoke about casting down your buckets and receiving the waters around you. Whites should cast down their buckets to use the former slaves at hand, and the blacks were called to stop nurturing the bitterness and to embrace the South as their home. Booker received an abundant amount of recognition from the newspapers for his speech. He earned honorary degrees from both Harvard and Dartmouth. In 1901, Booker T. Washington wrote Up from the Slavery. His book was translated in numerous languages. Booker saw that the blacks had been more enslaved by debt than they had been when they were in slavery. He wanted to help farmers with everyday duties. Washington and a man named W.E.B. Du Bois, who was a professor at Atlanta University, started the National Negro Business League. They collaborated to uplift the race. It was in exchange for farmers to get help with their farming methods and much more. Booker said, "It makes a man more truthful when he owns land." In 1897, George Washington Carver joined the faculty at Tuskegee. He called his laboratory God's Little Workshop. In 1901, President McKinley was assassinated and Theodore Roosevelt became president. President Roosevelt invited Booker T. Washington to dine at the White House. Booker was the very first black man to be invited at the White House. The newspapers did not like the idea that he had dinner with the president. During this time, Du Bois and Washington started to have a divided relationship. Booker T. Washington stressed duties, Du Bois stressed rights. Booker was a Hampton, Du Bois was from Harvard. Washington died a Christian and asked to be buried in the South. Du Bois was a communist and was buried in Ghana, the home he chose after leaving America in bitterness. Tuskegee had been built from a dream and grown significantly by the time Washington died. It went from nothing to laboratories, shops, classrooms, community outreaches, a center for the community, and a gathering for exchanges. And it was all because of Booker T. Washington's vision to help improve the lives of blacks. Booker collapsed in New York October 25, 1915, and died November 14th. Booker T. Washington started as low as a slave and rose to be a great leader. He walked humbly with God. He preached vision and values. He had a depth and compassion and height of vision. He cultivated friendships with his people he admired. He understood the nature of a covenant community. Booker T. Washington truly was an apostle of his time.